To introduce myself, my name is Elizabeth Williams. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a financial advisor here at VLP. And if you're attending for the first time, welcome. We really appreciate you tuning in. And for those returning, welcome back. And thank you for your continued trust in our firm. A little bit about VLP. VLP is a financial planning and wealth management firm located in Vienna, Virginia. We work with clients nationwide. Now, our goal is to be a trusted partner to individuals, families, and businesses. We serve to help them to determine what live greater means to them. In the last 25 years, we've grown from a two-person firm to a team of 21, which includes 7 certified financial planners, 5 accredited investment fiduciaries, 2 chartered financial analysts, and a certified divorce financial analyst. Today, our advisors have a collective experience of over 100 years. And today, we are joined by Kyle Giesting, Vice President Market Leader with Franklin Templeton, to discuss the 7 things you need to do in the decade before you retire to ensure a comfortable and an enjoyable retirement. So lastly, just want to say we have muted you all and everyone's video is off. But if you have a question, please enter it in the chat box and we will save time at the end to address all of your questions. If you want to take it offline, we are more than happy to schedule time to talk with you. So please call us or schedule time with your advisor here at VLP. We're happy to do so. So with that being said, I'm going to now stop sharing and turn it over to Kyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. Great to be with everyone on this Thursday morning before what I hope to be a pleasant and enjoyable holiday weekend. I'm going to pull up the presentation on my end. So let's start. And let's see if all this is coming through appropriately. Can we see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. And we are seeing the home stretch, correct?
We are. Thank you.
Fantastic. And the name is apt for what we're going to be talking about today. And we use the analogy of a foot race. Before we get into any of the content, though, allow me to introduce myself. As mentioned, my name is Kyle Giesting. I work with financial advisors in the greater DMV area, and I am privileged to present some content today about 7 things that individuals should be considering in the decade before they retire. And Franklin Templeton publishes a lot of great content because we believe in the value of financial advice. That's been a hallmark of our firm since our founding in 1948. And where we stand today, we employ 20 independent asset managers, a wealth management team focused on planning, and then that's some of the content we're going to be looking at today. I mentioned the analogy of a run or a race. And if you've ever participated in a marathon, you may be familiar with taking that final turn into the finish line of the marathon race. And you may notice that your intensity ratchets up. And this part of the race is known as the home stretch. It's a critical stage. This is the part of the race where we want to finish, we want to be standing, and the last thing any runner wants to do is stumble across the finish line. And if that analogy resonates with you today, then we are going to be talking about 7 different things that individuals can do to better prepare themselves for that home stretch before they enter into retirement. So a brief look at the agenda today. We're going to breeze through 7 items, determining when the time is right, taking aim at that retirement target. We're going to talk about maximizing your nest egg, some things you might not be aware of. We will transition to what it means to get a portfolio checkup, what it means to set time with the advisors at VLP. We're going to briefly talk about Social Security. It's an ever-changing landscape, but I hope to dispel a few myths as it pertains to Social Security. And then finally, we'll talk about building a retirement income stream. There's many different ways to do it. And most importantly, we'll close with looking beyond the money. What does retirement mean to you as an individual? So without further ado, let's get started with agenda item number 1, determining when the time is right. And this is a personal decision. I think there's industry rules of thumb, but in order to determine when the time is right for you as an individual, we probably need to start by giving you a little refresher on the history of retirement. If there's any history buffs on the call, you'll recognize the gentleman on the screen. This was the Chancellor of Germany in the late 1800s. His name was Otto von Bismarck, and he's often credited with being the godfather of retirement. And the reason for that is in an effort to stave off political opponents during a period of high unemployment, Otto implemented what was called the Old Age and Disability Insurance Law. And this law provided a state pension for anyone who reached the age of 70. So he set the retirement age at 70 in the late 1800s, but not that many people were able to take advantage of the program. And no surprise to anyone on this call, that was because life expectancy at the time was 43 and a half years of age. Now, here in the United States, we've taken Otto's original program, we've enhanced, we've evolved it, and Social Security can trace its roots back to this program, but we formally introduced it in the United States in 1935. And when it was introduced, 65 was defined as the full retirement age. But you'll notice on the screen here, average life expectancy has moved up from the 1890s from 43 and a half to about your mid 80s where we stand today. So early on, someone would have been lucky to reach retirement age. Today, as we cross that home stretch into retirement, we advise clients to expect to be spending 20 years or more living in retirement. So having that information, what age do you think you'll retire? And this is a critical question. It's not easy to answer, but there's some industry leaders. For example, Morningstar did a survey of clients in their 40s and 50s, and they simply asked them, when do you estimate that you'll retire? And there were some surprising results that emerged. For example, when someone thought they'd retire at the age of 55, the research showed that on average, they're most likely going to retire later than they originally expected, and the average result of these surveys was 58. And that could be because of the cost of healthcare. Medicare doesn't start until 65. Maybe that became a factor of extending into the workplace a little bit longer so they didn't have to incur that cost. Perhaps the nest egg wasn't as big as that individual originally had anticipated. Or maybe there just were some higher expenses that came up. Conversely, what Morningstar found is for anybody who thought they'd retire at 65, the research showed that they were most likely going to retire early at maybe 63. And that could be because health didn't hold up all the way up to 65. Maybe unemployment happened. Maybe they met their goal early and they decided, you know what, I don't want to take those final 2 years to work. But in all the research, the most common factor that was found happened to be the age of 61. So anyone who thought they'd retire younger was drawn up towards 61, and anyone who planned to work longer past 61 was actually pulled back down. And in this particular study, no factor had any predictive power other than the age of 61. So not job stress, physicality, income, health, or education level. 61 kind of tended to be that middle road of when people actually retired compared to when they thought they'd retire. And it's good to know that we might not retire exactly when we plan, but when do people actually retire, right? The previous slide kind of shows you there's a moving scale, so to speak. This chart's going to show you that the largest group of percentage of Americans that are retiring by age group happens to be in that 61 to 65 bracket. Now, for everyone on the call, as you entertain retirement, this is an exciting phase of your life, but think of this as a guidepost and not an absolute. You're going to have to work with the advisors at VLP because you're probably going to need to make adjustments as you're confronted with life's twists and turns, which we all know are almost guarantees. Let's take a look at an example of couples. And one important factor to consider when it comes to pinpointing the right time to retire is factoring in that decision with your spouse. Let's take a look at an example of a couple who was married a few decades ago. 1984, the average age of men to first get married was 25, and for women, it was 23. Now, this resulted in an average marriage gap of about 2 years. What's interesting about this is even though people are getting married later in today's years, the age gap, that 2-year gap, still holds true. So let's fast forward to when this example, the husband is now 65, their spouse was 63. And if the spouse is not covered by a workplace medical plan and is younger than 65, in this example, she's not going to be eligible for Medicare and would need to pay out of pocket for healthcare insurance. So that's a factor that couples need to consider when they adjust for that age gap. Now, if we move ahead in time, when the husband reaches age 83, the average life expectancy for a 65-year-old man at the end of 2023 is actually 83. So we're going to just maybe assume that, the husband might pass away at this age. And this is critical because women tend to live longer on average than men. She was already younger than her husband when they married. So in this example, the wife is likely to spend 5 years or more in retirement on their own. And that's a critical planning decision when we decide when we're going to retire. Now, again, these are just averages. Some of these gaps may be significantly wider. Some of these gaps may not hold true. But we just want to present this example because it's an important factor to consider when we're trying to pinpoint the right age for retirement. Now, over the coming decade, assuming we're not in retirement yet, there's a couple age-related milestones, and we'll cover a few of these in more detail later on. But for everyone on the call, if you're taking notes, there are IRA 401k catch-up provisions that start at the age of 50. If you're not familiar with those, it's a great reason to get in contact with your advisor and see if you could take advantage of those. Required minimum distributions have been pushed back to be either in the age of 73 or 75. And there's some other important milestones in between here, especially with Social Security and full retirement age. This will all be discussed later. And if you're not familiar with some of these important age milestones, VLP can definitely help you take advantage of them. Let's move on to agenda item number 2. So we've discussed the timing of retirement. We've alluded to a couple factors, that people need to consider. But let's look at one of the biggest questions of retirement, which is how much do I need? And again, this is going to be a personal discussion with your advisor, but we'll take a look at some industry rule of thumbs to help everyone on the call take better aim at their retirement target. Now, that first rule of thumb is to generally save between 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income. And you might be asking yourself, well, why do I need less in retirement? Well, certain costs are likely to go down once you retire. Let's consider maybe paying off our mortgage, or maybe we're going to spend less money on transportation from a commuting perspective. If you work and you have dress shirts, you wear a suit for work like myself, your dry cleaning costs are going to go down. You may be spending less on food because you're going to have more time to prepare at the house. But these same reductions can be countered by other costs that might go up in retirement. And many retirees don't factor in healthcare costs to an appropriate degree, because we're no longer going to be covered by a workplace medical plan. And even with Medicare, some premiums and copays could rise as we age and healthcare costs go up. Now, we also want to have some positives here. Hopefully in your retirement years, in those go-go years, that we're spending more on travel. We want to encourage you to travel and get the most out of life, whatever your goals may be. You might spend more time at home though, so you may not think about it, but your electricity, your utility bills could go up. And if we want to stay in the house, if we want to age in place, there may be some home maintenance that we need to consider. Now, there's also going to be some costs that completely go away or go down, and that can help offset some of the increases we just talked about. Two of the big things that are going to likely reduce from when you're working to when you're going to retire is you're no longer going to be paying into Social Security and Medicare payroll taxes anymore. And second, you're not going to be making as much contributions to your retirement savings. And when we factor all this together, that's why the industry rule of thumb is to consider having 70 to 90% in pre-retirement income. The second rule of thumb is to save a multiple of your salary based on your age. Now, this is just a rule of thumb. Sometimes I show this chart and people get startled. Again, we're lumping everyone together and we're having averages. But if we were in that age bracket of 55, we would want to have 6 to 8 times our salary. So in this example, if somebody had a $100,000 salary, we would hope that their retirement savings would be in that $600,000 to $800,000 window. Now, this is just meant to give you an idea. The advisors at VLP can hone in on this more specifically for you. But again, just a good industry rule of thumb. The final rule of thumb is we need to save enough to generate a desired income stream. And 4% is just, again, an average. Some people might need less, some people might need more. But let's take a look at some different desired annual income streams. And we want to kind of differentiate between super conservative and maybe a balanced approach to a return profile on your savings. And the first example is some clients say, you know what, I'm going into retirement. I want to be in all fixed income. Money markets are now paying 5% yields. Maybe they are planning for maybe a 1.5% return profile. So if we had a retirement savings and we wanted to generate $25,000, 1.5% off of $545,000 would get you your desired annual income stream. But many people say, you know what, I want to have a cushion. What if I wanted to have $100,000 in desired annual income? You'll notice that 1.5% return profile, you're going to need over $2.1 million. Now, we're not asking everybody on the call here to take a bunch of risk, go out and buy a bunch of high beta growth tech stocks. But if we were able to work towards more of a balanced approach and generate a 5% return profile, you'll notice that the amount of money required to generate those desired income streams goes down. Now, all investments involve risk. That's why it's important to work with an advisor at VLP to create a balanced investment portfolio. But a 5% return is feasible in today's environment where yields are and where the stock market is today. Let's move on to number 3 for the home stretch. So we've kind of discussed, what is retirement, when are some appropriate ages, how to possibly hone in on that retirement income stream. But as we head into this final decade before retirement, we want everyone on this call, where appropriate, to be taking advantage of some tax-advantaged options to increase retirement savings. We're going to use an example here. We're going to follow a hypothetical couple who is looking to maximize their nest egg. Both these individuals are 50 years old. The husband's an engineer. He's got an annual income of $150,000. And the wife is a retired teacher. She does some volunteer work on the side, but they have an annual income of $150K. And when it comes to saving for retirement, one of the most common ways to do so is through our workplace retirement plan. In this example, we'll use a 401k. And in 2024, the max annual contribution limits for these various types of plans are listed on the screen. Let's assume that the husband contributes to the 401k, and let's assume that they max out that annual contribution of $23,000 a year. Now, in addition to that contribution, many workplace retirement plans offer a match. Some matches vary. In this example, we're going to assume that he gets 50 cents for every dollar contributed up to 6% of their total salary. So that would mean on top of that 23,000, there's an additional 4,500 in contributions every year. Now, here's where getting older and approaching retirement can actually help. If you participate in a workplace plan and you're 50 or older, you can do what's called a catch-up contribution. In this example, that means saving an additional $7,500 per year in that 401k plan just through additional catch-up contributions. That's a huge benefit. If we can do it and we're not doing it, that might be something to talk to VLP about. Now, many people assume that if you participate in this workplace retirement plan, you're not going to be eligible to save using a tax-advantaged IRA. This is not always the case. If your income is under the limits listed on the screen here, you can also participate in a traditional or a Roth IRA, even if you've already maximized your 401k contribution. So for example, since our couple is married and they have income that is less than $240,000, the working spouse can contribute an additional $7,000 to a Roth IRA. Now, there's some differences between traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs. The advisors at VLP can explain those differences to you. But in this situation, we have another $7,000 that can be contributed. And just like the 401k, that Roth IRA will allow for a up to $1,000 catch-up contribution. So we have another $1,000 that can be deployed. Now, since the spouse is retired and they're not working, another way that the individuals could maximize their retirement nest egg is to open up a spousal IRA. A spousal IRA does have some income limits. You can see them on the screen here. But since their combined income is less than $240K, they can add an additional $7,000 to a spousal IRA. In this case, we'll say a Roth IRA, and they can contribute an additional $1,000 as a catch-up provision for that spousal IRA. So if our couple, assuming, was able to take advantage of every opportunity we just discussed, that's an additional $51,000 a year in tax-advantaged retirement accounts that they could save for. And saving that much over 15 years, which would put them at 65, and assuming a reasonable 6% return over that period, that's an additional $1.2 million that they could save from the age of 50 on into retirement at 65. Now, I'll be the first to admit every individual or couple has unique circumstances. They may not be able to use all the tax advantage savings that we just discussed, but we want to present this information because if you do fit that criteria, if you're not talking about these things, VLP can definitely help you out. And just as VLP can educate you on the differences between Roths and traditional IRAs, they are also there to help give you a portfolio checkup. And just as we like to see our doctors on an annual basis, we encourage everyone at Franklin Templeton to meet with your advisor on a regular basis so you can have the same type of care and coverage for your retirement accounts. What does it mean to get a portfolio checkup, though? Well, simply put, today's workforce is more mobile than ever. And in a 2017 report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we found that individuals born between 1957 and 1964 switched jobs an average of 12 times by the time they reached the age of 50. Now, we've already talked about it. The most common way for people to save today is through these workplace retirement plans, 401ks. But in another recent report, it showed that 71% of jobs include a 401k or a similar retirement plan. So if we're switching jobs through the course of our career, we're going to maybe have multiple accounts, maybe different 401ks that are sitting out there. And 69% of these plans have auto enrollment plans. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you have been a job changer through the course of your career, it could mean that you've left some assets in previous plans. And you may think, well, your current retirement plan is appropriate for your current age. We're going to use an example of 60% stocks in blue, 40% in fixed income or bonds. But if we haven't accounted for maybe some of those previous jobs that we had that we saved in retirement plans for, our allocation may be very different in those previous accounts that we've left behind. When we were younger, in previous job number one, we were probably allocated more towards equities. In that job that we transitioned to, we may have started to layer in some fixed income. But you can see those previous workplace retirement plans usually have a very different allocation than where we are today. And if we're not doing a portfolio checkup and we're not combining all these assets into one account, really our overall retirement allocation could be skewed. So we encourage everyone to consolidate their assets through their career journey. And you don't have to take my word for it. If you look at the Employee Benefits Retirement Institute, they did look at this a few years ago, and they found that individuals that hold one or more retirement plan tended to be over allocated to stocks as they head into retirement because many of their assets were invested in stocks years ago, and they forgot about those assets that were left at previous plans. So number one, a portfolio checkup can help you consolidate assets. And we know that individuals have changed jobs significantly over the years. What can happen if we're over allocated to stocks as we head into retirement? Well, let's assume that you're 3 years away from retirement. And we're going to assume that you've got $900,000 in assets. You've got a goal of $1 million. To hit that goal, you've got to contribute, about $830 a month. And we're going to assume that you're going to earn an average 8% annual return for stocks. And on paper, it could appear that you're going to exceed that $1 million goal. But not all periods in history are created the same. And in this example, what if that individual was planning to retire in the early 2000s and they had to face the tech bubble of the early 2000s? If you're over allocated to stocks, when the tech bubble burst, you can see that over allocation to equities is going to leave you about $400,000 short of your retirement goals. So in other words, to use that race analogy again, we have stumbled just before the finish line, and volatility can wreak havoc on our portfolio as we head into retirement. Now, some individuals will say, well, I've got a balanced portfolio of 50-50. During this specific period, a 50-50 allocation still leaves you short of your retirement goal. But by having a balanced approach, it would have taken you an additional 12 months to hit that $1 million goal, whereas the individual that was over allocated to equities, assuming they stayed invested in stocks, would need another 3, almost 4 years to hit that retirement goal. Now, being over allocated to stocks is on one end of the spectrum, but let's assume there's another individual that says, you know what, I'm going to try and jump in and out of the market. When I see volatility, I'll go to cash. Same parameters, 900K. We have a goal of $1 million, but in this example, this individual was balanced at 50-50 right before the global financial crisis of 2007. And by February of 2009, you can see that the portfolio has dropped significantly to just under $700,000. Now, some individuals say, you know what, I can't take the volatility anymore. and they reallocate their portfolio to being 100% cash. We're going to use treasury bills as an example of this. And if that individual did so, by the time it came time for retirement, those T-bills did not provide enough return profile to help them hit their retirement goal. If they had just stayed invested in that 50-50 balanced portfolio, you can see that the rebound of 2009 and 2010 would have allowed them to hit their retirement goals. So one of the challenges of retirement is managing our emotions, working with a financial professional, and not jumping in and out based on volatility, but having an appropriate investment allocation. So the moral of the story here is we don't want to be too aggressive. We don't want to be too conservative. And working with a professional can help you consolidate your retirement accounts to determine an appropriate allocation for you. The other thing Portfolio Checkup can do for you is making sure our beneficiaries are updated and we have the appropriate beneficiaries listed on our retirement accounts. We'd all like to be married for as many years as we possibly can, but divorce is a reality. And if you have old retirement accounts with a previous spouse listed, we want to make sure that we update those to have a new spouse listed on those. We may want to include children on our accounts as well. And if you've set up a living trust, you may want to add the trust as a beneficiary to your retirement accounts. Here's the thing that many individuals are not aware of when it comes to updating your beneficiaries. In most cases, the beneficiaries listed on your retirement accounts override the beneficiaries that are listed in your will or your trust, even if the will or trust is newer. So think about your beneficiaries on your accounts, talk to VLP, and make sure during that portfolio checkup phase we've updated with appropriate beneficiaries. Okay, we're moving right along here. Number 5, let's talk about Social Security. This is another thing that we need to be considering in that home stretch. Social Security is actually a primary source of income for a lot of retirees in America right now. And we need to be aware of some benefits to the program. We also need to be aware that it may not look the same in the future, and why having an investment approach outside of Social Security where appropriate is extremely advantageous. We talked about Social Security coming from the Godfather Otto von Bismarck, but where do we get the revenues for Social Security? And from the 80s to about the early 2020s, we had additional revenue coming from taxes and government interest, because any additional revenue is going to be invested in government bonds. So we had a little bit of a surplus. But you'll notice there's an inflection point that is occurring right about now in our point of history, which is the benefits that we know Social Security is going to have to pay out in the future, and the surplus is dwindling away. Those revenues are dwindling away. Now that surplus is starting to decline significantly. And it's estimated that in about 2035, that surplus is going to run out. Now, that doesn't mean that the program is going broke. So long as we have working Americans, there will be a source of revenue for future benefits. But it does mean that if there's no changes made, that in the future, we can expect about a 20% cut in benefits. And that's kind of a tough pill to swallow, especially as we're facing retirement. Now, it remains to be seen if there will be changes to the program. There are some easy fixes. For example, one solution would be a 3.6% payroll tax increase. Nobody likes to see taxes go up. That's a hard sell for politicians. But I think a harder sell for politicians is telling individuals and voting Americans, especially when 10,000 baby boomers retire every day on average, that their Social Security checks are going to face a 20% cut. So we don't know what the answers are going to be for Social Security, but we do expect changes to occur as we approach that 2034 timeline. The other thing that we need to understand with Social Security is how to maximize the program for you. Yes, you can draw down on Social Security and take your benefits as early as 62 for most individuals. But we need to know how we can get 100% of our benefit. And what's listed on the screen here is the year at which you were born and your full retirement age. So for everyone who was born 1960 and later, to get 100% of your Social Security benefit, you would have to start filing for Social Security at your full retirement age, the acronym FRA. And for those 60 and later, it's going to be 67 years of age. If you delay Social Security, you get what are called delayed retirement credits. And that's where you get an 8% bonus added to your retirement Social Security benefit after your full retirement age. What I'm showing you on the screen here are maximum monthly benefits for individuals this year, and it starts at 62 and it goes all the way to 70. So again, maximum means that this has been a high earner paying into Social Security for 35 years. And you'll see that if you draw early compared to full retirement age at 67, you're going to have a haircut of over $1,000. If there are other sources of retirement, we can increase that Social Security benefit up to $4,800 by delaying till 70. Now, Social Security is a personal choice. I'm just here to present the numbers to everyone on this call, but the story remains true if we were to account for the average monthly benefit. And this is the average monthly benefit that Americans currently receive. And you'll see even by delaying till full retirement age, there's still some added benefits to that. And if we can get to 70, we can really maximize that Social Security income stream. But it's also important to remember, if we're a high earner, Social Security is not going to make up a significant portion of your pre-retirement income. In fact, if you were making $50,000 a year pre-retirement, Social Security makes up about 48% of your pre-retirement income. The story gets worse if we are a high earner. So it's always important to work with a financial professional to estimate how much income we might generate from the program. But we also want to develop a strategy to make up for the difference that Social Security is not going to provide. How do we make that difference up? Well, we need to start talking about how we're going to build a retirement income stream. And this is agenda item number 6 for the home stretch. To pay for living expenses, we're going to have Social Security. There may be other income sources, and there's no such thing as just, one retirement paycheck. We want to look at a couple different ways that we could generate income in retirement. And one basic strategy is to invest your retirement savings into safe investments. Money markets are now yielding 5%. That's been one benefit of the rise in interest rates. You've got 1-year CDs, but prior to this interest rate increase, if we look back 10 years from 2013 to 2023, $500,000 didn't generate a significant amount off of these safe investments. And they seem attractive now, but it's important to remember that the yields we're getting off these safe investments today are not guaranteed for the next 10 years. So we would encourage individuals to start entertaining, core bonds, maybe investment grade corporates. We've put some sample yields on here, municipal bonds for non-qualified assets if we're in a high tax bracket. And if we have the stomach for maybe some high yield type of fixed income, you can see how the return profile, more importantly, the income stream can change significantly compared to those safe investments. The other way we generate income is to have systematic withdrawals. This is a popular strategy for people approaching retirement. There's some benefits to it. There are some drawdowns. In this example, though, we're going to use $500,000 that is in the nest egg for retirement assets. And we want to generate about $1,500 a month in systematic withdrawal. Now, systematic withdrawal means that we are going to systematically sell a certain amount of shares that we own, maybe in mutual funds, maybe it's you individually owned stock positions, but we're going to systematically sell a portion of our investments to generate that $1,500. And in times where the markets are favorable and beneficial to us, we sell less shares because there's been appreciation in value. But in months where your portfolio might go down in value, we actually have to sell more shares. So taking a look at income producing products versus a systematic withdrawal, there's some pros and cons. For income producing products, we don't have to distribute any of the original savings, right? We don't have to sell more in the period where the market might be down, but the income could fluctuate. It's less predictable. In a systematic withdrawal plan, we can have more consistent income, but we may distribute principal based on market behavior. So all in all, that's why it's so critical to have that portfolio checkup and work with an advisor to develop the right strategy for your retirement income. But none of what we just talked about matters if we're only focused on money. We have to look beyond money in retirement. And let me explain to you what this means as we close our discussion today. When it comes to retiring, sure, money is important. We are paying ourselves to live, and it provides opportunity, but it is not everything. What we found is if you're 45 to 55 years old and you're feeling a little bit mundane, you're feeling a little bit down in the dumps, don't fear, you're not alone, because this is a point in people's lives where people report feeling the most unhappy in life. It's the stresses of work. It's the stresses of raising a family. It's the stresses of aging parents. We may have health changes that are starting to take place. And these things weigh most heavily on this age group. So it's probably not a coincidence that we've heard the term midlife crisis being associated with people in this age range. But the good news is that for many people in this window, it is going to get better. Time is on your side. And what this study has found is that we start to see happiness levels increase as we approach retirement and then continue on in retirement. This is probably because there's, lower stress levels. The kids are out of the house, less concern for our social status. We're not comparing ourselves to the Joneses. We've got more time to pursue hobbies. So as we age into retirement, it's important to pinpoint what those things are that make you happy and start to pursue them a little bit more. Now, having money is going to make retirement easier, but as the saying goes, it doesn't buy happiness. And several studies have shown that the most important factors in determining happiness in your retirement is your health. Are we exercising today? Are we taking a look at our diet? What's our friendships look like? Are we promoting community in our inner circle? Are we getting in touch with long lost friends that we haven't talked to in a while? And finally, are we cultivating family? These are the three most important factors that studies show for individuals to promote happiness as they continue on into retirement. I'm going to present a term that you may not be familiar with, but beyond health and relationships, it's important to have a sense of purpose. If you're on this call, you're preparing for retirement, and this term comes from Okinawa, Japan. It's called Ikigai. And what it really means and what it translates roughly is, what is your reason for getting out of bed every morning? What is your Ikigai? What do you love? What does the world need, and how can you contribute a little bit to that? What can you get paid for? Is there a hobby that you might be able to earn a little bit of side income that promotes your happiness? What are you good at? Let's cultivate those four things to promote why we continue to get out of bed every morning. And people in Okinawa might think the concept of retirement doesn't even make sense to them. You don't wake up one day and stop doing everything that you enjoy in life. So for people who plan properly in retirement, this means that you get to focus more on getting paid for things that you like to do as a side hobby, promoting the activities that you're good at, what you love, and what the world needs. You don't need a retirement plan as much as you need a retirement living plan. And VLP can help you hone in on those different things when they factor in longer life expectancy, better health during later years. And new retirees in those go-go years, they often report a phase of increased travel. If that's a goal that you're working towards, I'd talk to your advisor about it. Is it leisure activities? Is it pursuing favorite hobbies? Some rechannel their talents and energies into starting maybe a side business. I've alluded to some of that. Maybe you devote significant hours to volunteering or philanthropic purposes. But however you spend your retirement years, it's important to identify the things that are meaningful to you so we can better pursue them. And your advisor definitely should be a part of that conversation. I'm going to skip past this in just the interest of time, but these are some examples of individuals who have changed the world significantly as they hit those later years. You can see we've saw somebody climbed Mount Everest. Colonel Sanders started KFC at the age of 65. Madonna Buter was a triathlete, and Peter Roget invented the thesaurus. So don't think that your retirement years are meant to dwindle away. Your best years are ahead of you. In summation, we talked about not wanting to stumble across the finish line in this home stretch for retirement. And we talked about 7 different items today. VLP can have a customized conversation with you about these 7 agenda items and help you feel confident as you approach retirement that you are on the right path for maximizing retirement, maximizing your meaning of life, and looking beyond money. So I would encourage you to set time with the team at VLP, but hopefully you've taken away some value from the presentation today about the 7 things you need to do before retirement. And I can't thank everyone enough for giving me the opportunity to present. So with that, Elizabeth, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. This was very informative, and I know a lot of people learned a lot today. I do have a few questions. One that came in earlier in the program, just you spoke about healthcare, and if this client said, if I were to retire earlier, how do I know what my healthcare options are, and how do I know how much I'm going to be paying for healthcare? So I know we have a healthcare specialist that we work with here, that we've partnered with, an independent insurance agent. So somebody that would be able to help you based on where you live, what your healthcare needs are, also your age and how many years until you hit that magic age of 65. But like a lot of things in financial planning, just want to emphasize it depends. So everybody's situation is unique. So, it's really important to bring this concern up with your advisor so that we can look at what other options that you have. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, some individuals may retire early, but if they're married and their spouse continues to work, there may be, benefits to being a part of their spouse's healthcare plan. So yeah, there's not a one-size-fit-all answer on that. But I think it's extremely valuable that you guys have an in-house specialist to answer those type of questions.
Well, so and we don't have an in-house. We have somebody that we partner with, but also just to piggyback off of that, somebody said when it comes to Medicare, what do we do in trying to understand the ABCs of Medicare? And just like this independent insurance agent that we've partnered with, we also have a Medicare specialist that's going to walk you through what particular healthcare options are best for you and your particular situation. So
yeah, they use simple letters like part A, B, C, and D, but there's so many complicated nuances to them. So yeah, I would encourage those conversations to be had with you all.
Yes. But I also just want to emphasize, as Kyle talked about it so eloquently, that it is a process. And even though we said something about 10 years, it's never too early to start preparing. And life happens. So it is a process, it's ongoing, and to check in at least on an annual basis and go over your financial plan. And when something does occur in life, to make sure that you do communicate that. But here at VLP, we really like to just emphasize with our clients that we start with financial planning and goals in mind. So we start with what is important to you as the client, and and then we will look at all of your information again, what your goals are, and then build the customized plan from there. So Kyle, thank you so much. This was very informative. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully all of our clients on the call did. And if anybody, again, has any other questions, please reach out to us. You know how to reach us, either by phone or schedule time with your advisor here at VLP. So thank you so much, Kyle.
Pleasure being here. Thanks for including me. Wishing everyone a happy Memorial Day weekend.
That's great. Thank you. Bye-bye.